I used to think love meant building something together. Turns out, some people prefer demolition. The concrete mixer churned beside me, its mechanical rhythm as steady as my heartbeat once was. I guided the wet cement into the forms we'd built that morning, watching it settle into place with the same care I'd once put into laying the foundation of my marriage. 8 years ago, I thought Lisa and I were building something that would last. Now, standing in the Arizona heat with concrete dust coating my work boots, I could see how wrong I'd been. It started downtown at Murphy's Pub during that ridiculous bar crawl her marketing firm organized. I was there with my crew, still wearing my Carhartt jacket with Precision Construction embroidered on the chest. Lisa walked in wearing a black dress that probably cost more than I made in a week, her auburn hair catching the bar lights like copper wire. She was everything I wasn't, polished, sharp-tongued, ambitious in ways I'd never understood. When she laughed at something her coworker said, the sound cut through the crowd noise like a circular saw through pine. I should have known then that we spoke different languages. "You're not from around here," she said when I offered to buy her a drink, eyeing my calloused hands wrapped around a beer bottle. "Born and raised in Phoenix," I replied. "You?" "Chicago. Moved here for work." She studied me like I was a blueprint she couldn't quite read. "Construction? Residential and commercial. You? Corporate strategy." The way she said it made it sound like she was speaking a foreign language I'd never learn. But that night, our differences felt like puzzle pieces clicking together. Her quick wit played against my steady presence. She made me laugh with stories about office politics. I grounded her with simple observations about the world she seemed to float above. When I walked her to her car, she kissed me with a hunger that suggested she'd been living on corporate cafeteria food for too long. "I don't usually date blue-collar guys," she admitted. "I don't usually date women who use the phrase blue-collar," I said back. She laughed, genuinely this time, and I thought I'd found something real. The early months were good. Lisa would show up at my job sites wearing designer heels that sank into the mud, bringing me lunch in containers that looked like they belonged in a museum. My crew loved her, especially when she'd bring enough sandwiches for everyone. She'd ask intelligent questions about what we were building, seemed genuinely interested in how I could look at empty lots and see finished homes. "You create things," she said once, watching me frame a doorway. "That's more than most people can say about their jobs." I built us a future in my mind, room by room. The shift was so gradual I almost missed it. Lisa got promoted to senior account manager, then regional director. Her salary doubled, then tripled mine. She started coming home later, talking about networking events and client dinners, in the same tone she might use to discuss quarterly reports. The little rituals that had bound us together began to fray. She stopped coming to my job sites. Then she stopped asking about them. The first time I noticed her washing her hands immediately after I touched them, I told myself she was just tired. When she forgot to mention the company Christmas party until the day after it happened, I convinced myself she thought I'd be bored. When her laughter at my stories became mechanical, forced, I blamed myself for not being more entertaining. But I couldn't ignore the dinner parties. "This is Mark," she'd say to her new corporate friends, her voice taking on that particular tone people use when they're explaining something embarrassing. "He's in construction." Not, "He builds homes for families," or "He's incredibly skilled at what he does." Just, "He's in construction," followed by a dismissive wave and a quick subject change to quarterly projections or market demographics. The correction came at a barbecue hosted by her director. I was telling a story about a foundation we'd poured in difficult terrain, proud of the problem-solving it had required. "You mean you laid the foundation?" Lisa interrupted, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Not poured." The group went quiet. I looked at her face, flushed with what I now recognize as shame. "Actually, we call it pouring when—" I started. "Mark's still learning proper terminology," she said with a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. You know how it is when you spend all day swinging a hammer? The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest, not because they were mean, but because of how easily they came out of her mouth, like she'd been thinking them for months, just waiting for the right audience. I excused myself to get another beer and stood by their granite countertop, looking out at their manicured lawn, finally understanding what I'd been too blind to see. Lisa wasn't just taking me for granted. She was ashamed of me, ashamed of what I did, how I talked, who I was when her coworkers weren't around to witness her charity work in dating down. That night, lying beside her in our bed, the bed I'd built with my own hands, I stared at the ceiling and made a decision. I started paying attention, really paying attention, and what I saw made my hands shake, not from fatigue, but from rage. The clock read 2:47 a.m. when I gave up trying to sleep and studied Lisa's face in the moonlight filtering through our bedroom blinds. She looked peaceful, almost innocent. Her auburn hair spread across the pillow like spilled paint. If I squinted, I could almost see the woman I'd fallen in love with 8 years ago. Almost. But I'd spent too many years reading blueprints to ignore structural problems when they were staring me in the face. I started small, the way you start any construction project, with careful observation and measurement. Lisa's phone had become Fort Knox over the past 6 months. Always face down, always password protected, always within arm's reach. She'd take it to the bathroom, to get coffee, anywhere she might be separated from it for more than 30 seconds. The next morning, she left it charging on the kitchen counter while she showered. I stood there for 5 minutes, listening to the water run, knowing I was about to cross a line I couldn't uncross. But marriages, like foundations, either stand on truth or they crumble. The phone was locked, but I could see the notification previews, text messages from Richard at 11:30 p.m. on a Monday night. Can't wait for tomorrow's meeting. Another one at midnight. Room 412. Room numbers aren't typically part of office meetings. I memorized her phone placement exactly and went to work, but my mind stayed home, cataloging details I'd been trained to notice but had chosen to ignore. The mileage on her Honda was off. She claimed her new office was 12 miles away, but she'd been putting on 25 to 30 miles a day for the past month. New lingerie appeared in her drawer, tags removed, worn once and hidden behind her old cotton briefs. She'd developed a sudden interest in regional conferences and weekend team-building retreats that never appeared on her calendar in previous years. At lunch, I called my buddy Danny Torres, a former Phoenix PD detective who'd started his own private investigation firm after retiring. Danny and I had served together in the Marines before he went into law enforcement and I went into construction. If anyone could help me separate paranoia from reality, it was him. Mark, Jesus, it's been what, 2 years? Danny's voice carried the same authority it had when he was wearing a badge. What's going on? I need your professional opinion on something, I said, sitting in my truck outside a McDonald's, watching families eat happy meals while my own family disintegrated. Hypothetically speaking, if a guy suspected his wife was cheating, what would you look for? Hypothetically? Danny's tone shifted to business. Behavioral changes, unexplained absences, financial irregularities, phone security, new grooming habits, change in intimacy patterns. He paused. How hypothetical are we talking here? Not very. Shit, Mark. I'm sorry. You want to talk about it? I told him everything. The late nights, the phone guarding, the mileage discrepancies, the way Lisa looked at me like I was a problem she needed to solve instead of a husband she'd chosen to love. Danny listened without interrupting, the way cops do when they're building a case. Could all be innocent? He said finally. Could also be exactly what you think it is. You want to know for sure? Yeah. It'll cost you. And once you know, you can't unknow it. How much? For you? $500 a day plus expenses. This kind of surveillance usually takes 3 to 5 days to establish a pattern. $500 was what I made in a long day on a good job, but living with uncertainty was eating me alive from the inside out. When can you start? Send me her photo and work schedule. I'll start tomorrow. That evening, Lisa announced she had a work retreat coming up the following week. 4 days in Sedona, she said, not quite meeting my eyes as she chopped vegetables for dinner with unusual enthusiasm. Team building, strategic planning, that sort of thing? Sounds important, I said, watching her face carefully. It is. Richard, my director, thinks these retreats are crucial for department cohesion. The way she said Richard's name, with just a fraction too much familiarity, confirmed what my gut already knew. Richard Castellanos? The one you've mentioned before? Yes. He's been incredibly supportive of my career development. Her knife work became more aggressive. These retreats have been really beneficial. I'm sure they have. Something in my tone made her look up sharply, but I kept my expression neutral. In construction, you learn to keep your poker face when you discover termite damage or foundation cracks. Panic doesn't fix problems. Careful planning does. Later that night, I found Lisa packing for her retreat with the kind of careful attention she used to reserve for our anniversary dinners. New outfits, expensive toiletries, that black lingerie I'd seen hidden in her drawer. She hummed while she packed, actually hummed, and the sound made my chest tight with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. "I'll miss you," she said, kissing me goodbye at the door Thursday morning. Her lips were soft, her perfume expensive, her relief at leaving almost palpable. She was escaping to someone else, and she couldn't hide her excitement. 4 days, I said, holding her close one last time. 4 days, she agreed, pulling away with a smile I finally recognized as guilt wearing a happy mask. I watched her Honda disappear around the corner, then went inside and called Danny. "She just left for her retreat," I said. "I'm already in position," Danny replied. 4 days, Mark. In 4 days, you'll either be the fool who wasted money on paranoia or the fool who married a stranger. I knew which one I was going to be. The only question was what I'd do about it. Danny's envelope arrived on Monday morning like a demolition order, thick and heavy in my hands as I sat in my truck outside the post office. I'd spent the weekend in a strange state of suspended animation, going through the motions of normal life while waiting for confirmation of what I already knew in my bones. My hands shook as I tore open the envelope. The first photograph hit me like a sledgehammer to the solar plexus. Lisa and Richard Castellanos wrapped around each other in what looked like a hotel pool, her head thrown back in laughter I hadn't seen in years. She wore a red bikini I'd never seen before, and Richard's hands rested possessively on her waist. But it wasn't the physical intimacy that destroyed me. It was the joy on her face. Pure, unguarded happiness that she hadn't shown me since the early days of our marriage. The next photo showed them at an intimate dinner, candlelight flickering between them as they leaned across a small table, fingers intertwined. Lisa wore the pearl earrings she'd told me her boss gave the whole team as a Christmas bonus. Apparently, the whole team was a team of one. More photos followed in devastating sequence. Richard kissing Lisa's neck as she closed her eyes in pleasure, the two of them entering a hotel room, his hand on the small of her back. Lisa wearing the gold necklace she'd claimed came from her quarterly bonus. Each image was time-stamped and location-stamped. But the last photo was the one that cut deepest. Lisa and Richard in hotel bathrobes on a balcony, sharing coffee and looking out at the Sedona Red Rocks. They looked like a couple, not two people having an affair, but two people building a life together. She looked at him the way she used to look at me, before I became an embarrassment to be managed rather than a partner to be loved. I sat in that truck for 20 minutes, studying the evidence like a crime scene investigator, noting every detail. The timestamps showed a pattern spanning the entire 4-day retreat, every moment documented. She hadn't just been cheating, she'd been living a double life. Danny's report included background on Richard Castellanos, 43 years old, married to Claire Castellanos for 18 years, father to 2 teenagers, senior director at Lisa's firm for the past 5 years. He owned a house in Scottsdale worth $800,000, drove a BMW, and had a reputation at the company for mentoring younger female employees. His wedding ring was clearly visible in several photos, catching the light as he touched my wife. This wasn't just an affair. It was a pattern, a systematic abuse of corporate authority that had probably destroyed other marriages, other families. Lisa might be my wife, but she wasn't Richard's first victim. The power dynamic made it even more nauseating. He was her boss, controlling her career advancement, using his position to manipulate and seduce. I researched Claire Castellanos online, finding her Facebook page filled with family photos, charity work, and proud posts about her job as a pediatric nurse. She looked kind, genuine, completely unaware that her husband was a predator who collected wives like trophies. Their kids, a 16-year-old boy and 14-year-old girl, smiled in family vacation photos, completely ignorant of the bomb ticking away in their father's secret life. I held their lives in my hands now. These photos could destroy not just my marriage, but Richard's marriage, his career, his children's sense of security. The weight of that responsibility should have given me pause, made me consider gentler options, private confrontations, marriage counseling. Instead, it made me furious. Lisa came home Friday evening glowing like she'd spent 4 days at a spa. She cooked my favorite dinner, grilled salmon with rice pilaf, and suggested we take a vacation together, maybe drive up to Flagstaff for the weekend. Her performance was flawless. Every gesture calibrated to suggest a wife who'd missed her husband, who'd spent 4 days thinking about how to improve their marriage. "How was the retreat?" I asked, cutting into my salmon. "Productive. Really productive." She smiled, but something flickered behind her eyes. "Richard thinks our department is really coming together as a team." Richard thinks a lot of things, apparently. If she caught my tone, she didn't show it. He's been a great mentor, very hands-on with his management style. I almost laughed at the unintentional accuracy of that statement. I'm sure he has been. After dinner, she suggested we watch a movie, something romantic. She cuddled against me on the couch, her head on my shoulder, occasionally stroking my arm with absent affection. It was a perfect imitation of the wife I'd fallen in love with, except for one detail that confirmed everything. "I love you, babe," she whispered during the movie credits, using the pet name she'd called me for 8 years. But I'd heard her use a different name in Danny's surveillance recordings. "Honey," whispered to Richard during their candlelit dinner, breathed against his neck during their poolside embraces. "I love you too," I said, kissing the top of her head while the photos burned in my jacket pocket like radioactive waste. That night, lying beside her as she slept peacefully, probably dreaming of her next business trip with Richard, I made my decision. I wouldn't confront her privately. I wouldn't give her the chance to spin lies, beg forgiveness, or promise to change. She'd had months to come clean, to show even a shred of guilt or remorse. Instead, she'd looked me in the eye every single day and lied. She wanted to play games with appearances and respectability, corporate hierarchies, and professional networks. She'd made our marriage into a performance for her convenience. Fine. I'd give her a performance she'd never forget. The black gift box cost me $47 at a boutique downtown, the kind of place Lisa shopped when she wanted to impress her corporate friends. Elegant, sophisticated, with a magnetic closure that whispered expensive when it snapped shut. I selected burgundy ribbon that matched the color of the wine Richard had ordered during their dinner at the Phoenician, a detail from Danny's surveillance that felt perfectly appropriate. I spent Monday evening arranging the photographs inside the box with the same methodical care I used to organize blueprints. Each image told part of the story, chronologically arranged so the recipient would experience the full narrative arc of deception. The poolside embrace as the opening act, the intimate dinners building tension, the hotel room entries for the climax, and finally, that devastating balcony photo as the conclusion, two people building a future on the ruins of their existing marriages. The note took me 3 drafts to get right. Too much anger would make it look unhinged. Too little would diminish the impact. I settled on elegant simplicity, handwritten in my best penmanship on cream-colored cardstock. For my beautiful, beloved wife, here is a gift that I thought would be perfect for you. I know how much you value honesty and transparency in all your professional relationships. The irony was sharp enough to cut glass, but delivered with the same loving language she'd been using to lie to my face for months. Tuesday morning, I watched Lisa get ready for work with the detached fascination of an engineer studying a machine he was about to dismantle. She stood before our bedroom mirror, practicing confident smiles, adjusting her blazer, checking her makeup. Her morning routine had become more elaborate lately. Better foundation, more expensive lipstick, perfume applied with strategic precision to pulse points. "Big day today?" I asked, sipping coffee and watching her transform herself into the woman Richard Castellanos thought he was stealing. "Department meeting. Richard wants to present our quarterly numbers to the regional directors." She checked her reflection one final time. "Could be important for advancement opportunities. I'm sure it will be memorable." Something in my tone made her glance at me sharply, but I kept my expression neutral, the same face I wore when clients asked about cost overruns or construction delays. Professional, controlled, revealing nothing. "I might be home late," she said, kissing my cheek with lips that tasted like lies and expensive cosmetics. "These meetings sometimes run long." "Take all the time you need," I said. At 10 a.m., 30 minutes after Lisa's meeting was scheduled to begin, I drove to her office building and personally delivered the box to reception. The young woman behind the desk, Sarah, according to her nameplate, smiled when she saw the elegant packaging. "Special delivery for Lisa Henderson," I said, playing the part of devoted husband with the same commitment Lisa had put into playing faithful wife. "She's in a meeting, but I wanted her to have this when she gets out." "How sweet," Sarah said, clearly charmed by the romantic gesture. "Anniversary?" "Something like that." Danny was already in position across the street with a telephoto lens and professional patience. I'd asked him to document the aftermath, to capture the moment when Lisa's carefully constructed corporate image imploded in real time. The first text came at 10:47 a.m. "Package delivered to meeting room." She looks excited. I was mixing concrete at a residential job site, the physical labor helping me maintain focus while my marriage exploded across town. The mechanical rhythm of the mixer matched my heartbeat as I waited for Danny's updates. 10:52 a.m. "She's opening it. Invited 2 co-workers to watch." Lisa always did love an audience for grand gestures. I imagined her in that sterile conference room, surrounded by colleagues, preparing to showcase her husband's thoughtfulness. The anticipation in her voice as she untied the burgundy ribbon, the dramatic pause before lifting the lid, the moment when romantic expectation collided with devastating reality. 10:53 a.m. "Holy shit, Mark. Her face just... Jesus." 10:54 a.m. "Photos everywhere. Co-workers backing away." 10:55 a.m. "Castellanos just walked in. He's white as a sheet." The images flooded my phone over the next 10 minutes. Lisa's face crumbling in high-definition color, her carefully applied makeup running in mascara streaks. Co-workers standing frozen around the conference table as intimate photographs scattered like fallen leaves. Richard Castellanos staring at evidence of his own predatory behavior spread across corporate furniture. The HR director's grim march down the hallway with security behind her. 11:15 a.m. "Both of them called upstairs. Security's standing by." 11:30 a.m. "She's in the parking lot. Crying. Throwing up." The physical reaction didn't surprise me. Lisa had built her entire identity around professional success and social respectability. Watching it disintegrate in front of her colleagues, seeing her carefully maintained image replaced by evidence of her betrayal, would feel like death. 11:45 a.m. Castellanos just got escorted out. Box of personal items. 12:30 p.m. She's been terminated. Cleaning out her desk now. I finished pouring the foundation that afternoon with steady hands and a clear mind. The concrete settled into perfect form, level and true, ready to support whatever structure would be built on top of it. Solid foundations require proper materials, careful preparation, and absolute integrity. Cut corners or use inferior components, and everything built on top eventually collapses. Lisa came home at 3:17 p.m., her Honda pulling into our driveway with the erratic speed of someone barely maintaining control. I heard her pounding on our front door, screaming explanations and apologies through the wood, her voice raw with desperation. "Mark, please! I can explain everything. It's not what you think." But it was exactly what I thought. Worse, actually, because the surveillance had revealed not just an affair, but a systematic deception that had poisoned every interaction between us for months. I slid the divorce papers under the door, papers I'd prepared the day before after studying Danny's photos, knowing that some structural damage can't be repaired, only demolished and rebuilt from scratch. "Mark!" Her fist hammered against the door. "Don't do this! We can work through this!" But there was no we to work through anything with. She'd made that decision months ago when she chose to build a secret life with her boss instead of fixing the problems in our marriage. The pounding stopped around sunset. Through the window, I watched her Honda disappear around the corner one final time, carrying away the woman I'd loved and the stranger she'd become. I built us a life. She chose to tear it down. Now she could see what happened when someone who actually knew about construction got to work. The aftermath unfolded with the systematic efficiency of a controlled demolition, each collapse triggering the next in a cascade of consequences that exceeded even my calculated expectations. Claire Castellanos received her own anonymous package on Wednesday, exactly 24 hours after Lisa's corporate meltdown. I debated whether to involve Richard's family directly, but his children deserved to know what kind of man their father really was before they started making their own relationship choices. Danny's surveillance had revealed this wasn't Richard's first affair, just his most photographed one. Claire filed for divorce within 48 hours of opening her burgundy-ribboned box. 18 years of marriage dissolved in the time it took her to flip through evidence of her husband's systematic betrayal. Arizona is a community property state, which meant she'd get half of everything: the house, the retirement accounts, the BMW. Richard would also be paying alimony and child support while starting over at 43 with a destroyed reputation. The company moved swiftly to contain the scandal. Richard lost not just his job, but his executive pension, forfeited due to violations of corporate ethics policies. Lisa's termination was classified as dismissal for cause, which meant no severance package, no COBRA benefits, no professional references. Both of their names went into the industry databases that track workplace misconduct, effectively blacklisting them from major corporate positions in Phoenix. The news spread through their professional network with viral efficiency. Corporate environments thrive on gossip, and the story of a senior director caught in an affair with a subordinate, exposed through photographs delivered during a department meeting, became legendary. Lisa's attempts to rebuild her reputation failed before they began. She was now that woman who'd had an affair with her married boss, whose personal life had exploded in spectacular public fashion. I maintained strategic silence throughout the fallout. Never gloating, never explaining, never dignifying the few mutual friends who called seeking gossip with detailed responses. When people asked where Lisa was, I simply said she'd moved out. When they pressed for details, I told them to ask her directly. Let them discover the truth the same way I had, through careful observation and patient investigation. My co-workers at the construction site noticed my improved mood, but respected blue-collar discretion. Danny Torres brought me a beer the following Friday and said simply, "Hell of a job, Marine. Precision demolition at its finest." That was the only commentary I needed. Lisa took a job in Tucson within a month, a significant step down in both responsibility and salary. Her confidence, that sharp-edged ambition that had initially attracted me, had been sandblasted away by public humiliation. She'd gone from regional director to assistant account manager, from corporate strategy to basic client services. The fall was exactly as far as her betrayal had been deep. Richard's divorce proceedings became a master class in financial devastation. Claire's attorney subpoenaed his company records, revealing a pattern of affairs with subordinates spanning 5 years. The evidence transformed what could have been an amicable separation into a complete asset seizure. His children chose to live with their mother full-time and requested supervised visitation only. The family camping trips and baseball games Richard had once enjoyed became awkward, court-mandated meetings in public spaces. The social consequences extended beyond legal proceedings. Richard's Scottsdale Country Club membership was quietly revoked after other members complained about his presence making their wives uncomfortable. His adult softball league asked him to leave mid-season. The professional networks he'd spent 20 years building evaporated as companies became reluctant to associate with someone whose personal conduct had become a cautionary tale. I found unexpected peace in routine. Morning coffee tasted better. Work felt purposeful rather than obligatory. The house seemed larger without Lisa's constant criticism and manufactured crises. I didn't date, didn't seek sympathy, didn't explain myself to anyone who hadn't earned the right to hear the truth. 6 months later, Lisa sent me a handwritten letter. She'd tracked down my address through mutual friends, despite our complete lack of contact since the divorce was finalized. The letter was 8 pages of explanations, justifications, and requests for forgiveness. She claimed Richard had manipulated her, that the power dynamic had made her vulnerable, that she'd never meant to hurt me. She talked about therapy and personal growth, about understanding her mistakes and wanting to make amends. I read it once, sitting in my backyard beside the fire pit I'd built during our 2nd year of marriage. Then I fed the pages to the flames, watching her words transform into smoke and ash. Some structures could be repaired, reinforced, restored to their original integrity. Others were so fundamentally compromised that demolition was the only option. She'd taught me the difference between building something that lasts and building something that looks good until the first real stress test. I was still building. My business was thriving, my reputation solid, my foundation unshakable. I just wasn't building with inferior materials anymore. The fire consumed her letter completely, leaving only clean ash that I swept into my garden the next morning. Good soil requires organic matter, decomposed remnants of things that once lived, but no longer served their original purpose. I had houses to build, futures to construct, foundations to pour with precision and integrity. The past was ash and fertilizer now, useful only for what could grow from its remains. Some lessons are worth learning, even when they come at the cost of everything you thought you wanted. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.